Welcome to the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Join your hosts, three-time WBFF world champions and WBFF royalty, Alicia Gowans and Stephanie Ayala McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Queen Divas podcast, where my beautiful co-host, Stephanie Ayala McHugh, and I are going to be discussing the latest advancements in wearable technology and fitness trackers.
Yeah, and cardio, guys, like a little bit of that cardio and activity, right? Because that's what it tracks. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Happy to see you, Ali, and just love this topic because I feel like just pulling up my watch here, I feel like it's just my weapon every single day. I feel like it's just something that we can, really enhance our day-to-day life, knowing how active we are, maybe how unactive we are. And I feel like there's just so many out there. So I feel like this kind of question always gets asked, right? Which one should I get? Which one is better? And what type is a better heart rate monitor or calorie tracker, etc. So we're going to be covering that today.
Yeah. And I think, look, the discussion came about for us mainly because it's actually like, it's not the be all and end all. And we will discuss a little bit about the different types and the inaccuracies in a lot of them as well, because it's really important we cover that off. And then we've obviously got the gold standard, which is the polar, and we'll get into that in more detail sort of further in the session. But the reason it's come up is because one of the things that we often see with people when they're in a weight loss, caloric deficit, goal driven to reduce body fat, they may have periods where they may plateau or where it might slow down. And it's a process of going, okay, well, we know in the calculated deficit we've got you in, there is no way you can't be losing weight. Right? We also know that obviously, yeah, we know that.
What's wrong with this client? Why are they not burning? Why is their heart rate not coming up?
We know that, look, there are variables there that are really hard to quantify, like the reduction in NEAT and thermogenic metabolism. So we understand all those things, but oftentimes the easiest low-lying fruit is, well, how intensely are you training? How are you even pushing in the gym? Like, are you even pushing in the gym? And what are you getting from a burn rate in these sessions? So a lot of the time, one of the go-tos for us is, you need to get yourself a polar heart strap now. I need you wearing it in your training and your cardio sessions, just so we can get a really good gauge on what your actual accurate output is.
Yes. And the fact that heart rate is so neglected blows my mind. Like, people don't understand where their heart rate is at, how much they are burning, like you're saying, accumulative throughout the session. What zones are they targeting? What are they doing? Are they really even trying to challenge their heart? And I think this is a number one question that I, tend to ask, a client is, asking how hard they're actually working their heart, right? Because it's not muscles we're trying to work here. I mean, yes, your muscles will be worked depending on the exercise and cardio piece of choice. It's really more of challenging that muscle of your heart, like actually thinking of how can I challenge my endurance. And as you get better, right, Ali, you're going to notice these athletes just not be able to perform your higher heart rates, right? Because you just get so much better as an athlete, like your heart conditions, and you actually just get so much better endurance. And because of that, it's like, man, I can't hit that caloric burn, or I can't hit those zones better. And I feel like going through those will kind of clarify some of that for some of the listeners here, is going through, do you understand the zones of your heart rate? And I think this is another reason why a monitor is so important. It is not just to understand your caloric burn, but also knowing your output efficiency, because maybe something is more efficient for you than other things. And understanding that, I find, is very key to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And also even understanding, if I need to be at this certain threshold in order to hit a burn rate, knowing what that feels like. So actually having a tracker and being able to see that, oh my God, I thought I was working hard on this level, but reality is I'm still sitting 20 below, reaching the next phase in my heart zone. All right, well, then I'm going to have to dig that bit deeper. And then when you actually start recognizing what the rate is versus how you're feeling in it, the discrepancy can be higher than what you thought. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I was really not training anywhere near it. Right?
I thought I was training hard, but efficient, obviously not. You're burning like 100 calories after 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, my God, I'm like literally cringing right now reviewing someone's plan that like 100 calories. You can literally just do a few sprints and, you know, obviously get that going. But no, if you sit in such a low intensity, and yes, of course, there's going to be different levels. You know, we've got beginners, we've got intermediates, and we've got more advanced individuals. And of course, every zone is going to be different for them to achieve that zone.
100%.
So,
and look, you know, there's even interesting situations and scenarios, like even if I think about my own context, I have a really low heart rate, like, but I think we've talked about this on another episode. I have a congenital heart defect and I sit really, really low, like, and my blood pressure is really low to the point where 9 times out of 10, Christos just laughs now. If we're in the hospital going through any of my situations where I'm being admitted, put on anesthesia, anything, they'll always do the reading, then go, oh, I think the machine's broken. I'm going to get another one, and they'll go get another one. It'll be the same. Then they'll go, I'm going to do it manually. And then they'll be like, okay, that's actually really low. So what I find is if you put Jacinta and I in the exact same exercise, right? You throw us on a rock climbing wall, or you throw us in the same training session and we're pushing same weight load, relative level of close to failure, you know, loads. You wait till you see the burn rate that she has after the session versus me. Mine is so much lower than the calories that she will burn in the exact same exercise with what would be, you know, you deem to be relative level of, you know, effort, expenditure, and, you know, intensity. So it's super interesting to see. And I think sometimes you don't have a good handle on where things sit until you actually see the data and you can actually track it. So it is worthwhile. And look, I wouldn't pin everything on it. I wouldn't say that, you know, it's super important for everyone. I wouldn't say that it's mandatory. You absolutely have to do it. And I would say there's definitely, it's like tracking your food. For some people, it is a negative thing and it can lead to obsessive behaviors, orthorexia, you know, overtraining, a whole bunch of things, right? So I'm going to caveat it and say you don't absolutely have to have one.
No, they're just
excessive,
useful tools.
But they're another tool in the toolkit, and they really have transformed the way that we can monitor our activity, our output, and our general. I think our general, you know, process when we're working towards a specific goal, right? So we can maximize performance with it, or we can, you know, create a format and a blueprint for greater body fat loss if we're going into a weight loss mechanism. So I think they're definitely value tools in the toolkit. So what do you wear? What's your
oh man, yeah, I was like going into trackers, right? No, I think so. Going into a heart rate strap versus an actual, you know, watch band. I feel like this is like the biggest common, you know, question is like, which one is better? And I've personally used both. I agree with Ali. It's very seasonal. It's dependent on the goal here. If we're trying to, you know, have some fat loss and weight loss goals, clearly I'm going to make sure I'm burning more than what I'm intaking. Therefore, I want it to be very accurate. I want it to be so accurate that I want to make sure that I'm actually within those zones. So in a prep, for example, if I am dieting down for a show and I am trying to get lean, I'm going to be using a chest strap monitor for my cardio sessions. I will wear a watch throughout my rest of the day, keeping track of course, you know, just kind of like my daily step count to understand, just like my movement. And for my off season, right? Like I use a watch, not the actual, you know, band, because I'm not trying to be so precise that I'm like, oh my gosh, that 50 calorie difference is going to make that big of a difference. But in prep, let me tell you that 50 calories does make a difference. And it does make a difference in accumulation. So I feel like that accuracy does make a difference in my, you know, consideration of understanding my own heart, how I've, you know, monitored it through different devices, you know, whether if that's an Apple Watch, a Garmin, a Polar Watch, and then even, of course, I've even done like the MyZone strap, which is a chest strap, and we have a Polar chest strap as well that I've actually really enjoyed. But honestly, the MyZone was just I'm very aesthetic, and I love the color grading that they have in their app,
Yeah,
and
they
it's like
do. Like
stars
it's the
and stuff.
orange light system, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I just love not having to look at the number, and I'm like, yeah, I hit the red, I'm in the, burning zone. Or so for me, it was just more of a just a good look to it. And I really enjoyed, kind of the app. So I did kind of stick to my zone for my last few years of prep. And then, like I said, Apple Watch is just like a bread and butter for me, since it is, just a very easy tool. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the most accurate, because it's not. It really
No,
is not.
they are
glitches.
more accurate though than a, say, Fitbit. There is a higher level of accuracy than, say, a Fitbit.
I agree.
But yes, there are some deviations and some,
It's just the fact that they have, to get software updates and all of that. So that might change. And depending on if you got version 1 through version 6, like, I think that has a lot to do with it too. So yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Apple Watch. I think that's just, of course, something that matches my phone in a good way.
Aesthetically pleasing too. Look, you can get like some really great bands on those. Like I have a Hermes band on my Apple, so it doesn't even, so it looks designer. It doesn't even look like a.
Oh yeah, I get the like metal ones, right? I get them like on Amazon, and just like literally.
They're great.
So look,
I agree with you. And I think that when we're thinking about the concept of having a tracker or a wearable device, you want to think about it in the mode of, okay, well, what's my purpose? What's my goal? How high is the volume on my goal? Am I dialed right up to a really high level of rigidity and, no deviation from the plan? Every second, every gram, every calorie, every rep counts. Then yes, you shouldn't look any further than the Polar 10 heart rate strap, because it's directly linked to your heart. You have the highest rate of accuracy there.
Right on top of that heart.
Yeah, you're going to get that. Like, there are certain exercises you can't wear it in. I mean, you can't take it in the pool swimming. Unfortunately, I wish we could. It'd be great to see what the burn rate is.
Right.
And for some people, they can be really uncomfortable. So look, you might not actually be someone that can get away with wearing a chest strap / heart rate monitor. But if you want to actually get some really real data and some solid accuracy, throw one of those on, because you'll be shocked at what you actually get at when you do a lower body session versus an upper body session. Burn rates are completely different.
Amazing.
You're doing a steady state long walk versus a high intensity Steph kill you metabolic session that she does, then it's a totally different output again. And I think they're worth doing just for that level of understanding of where you're currently at. And just know this too, you can always improve upon them. That's the thing with these things. They're a mechanism for you to use as another data point to make progress. Now, progress not always be, I'm here to burn half my body weight in body fat. It could be, hey, I want to lose a little body fat, but I actually want to perform better. I want to be able to run further. I want to be able to run faster. I want to be able to get on the bike and hit a 10K ride in so many minutes. Like, those are the really cool ways that you can actually then use these trackers for a different perspective. And then, as Steph touched on, which I think is super important, it's just general day-to-day awareness of what you're doing, what your output is. Like, if the other thing that I think is cool about them is, some of them have other data readings. Like, we should talk about the Oura Ring too, which you'll see here.
I was just going to bring up, like, even the Whoop, right?
Yeah,
because
Oura. Exactly. Like, I have never taken this off in 7 years now. When they very first came on the market, I had one of the very first ones, I'm pretty sure, here in Oz. And I've upgraded it twice since then, but I've never taken it off. And so I've got so many years of, cumulative data. Exactly. Nice. And the best
that's for your sleep. That's going to be a very great sleep tracker. So these are things that we're trying to, like Ali said, we're tracking data here. It's to understand your body. It's to really challenge your body, to not be just wondering, am I working hard enough? And you really sometimes don't even understand or ask yourself that question, because you're doing the work. So you just expect yourself to be doing the hardest work because it's hard work. And sometimes it is hard work when we're doing it, but is it really the right kind of work you need to be in? Because I see a lot of people just in general, they burn themselves to the ground sometimes with this cardio. And that's why I brought up cardio from the beginning. And
that's where the Oura Ring's good, because
it's your recovery.
Yeah. So it will track recovery. So you'll find I use like 3 different platforms that feed into and give me data to make informed decisions and auto regulation decisions, depending upon the collective data. So, you know, if my Oura ring is showing signs, I might be fighting something, you know, there might be something going on. My body, my immune system is on high alert. I might have impaired sleep. There might be slightly higher elevated stress levels. My HRV is dropping. Then I know that today I might swap across to my upper body day, because whilst then I can still get the intensity, I'm not trying to get my body and my central nervous system completely fried in a lower body session, right? So that data gives me the propensity for more informed decision making around when to rest, when not, when to. I always think about it as pedal to the metal, full, you know, systems blazing, or handbrake on, pull it back, you know, recover, focus on recovery a little bit. So the Oura Ring's great for that. That's another tool in the fitness tracking model, but it's a slightly different one because we're reading more full physiological system. We're reading more. This also, though, tracks my respiratory rate, which is another sign of cardiovascular health and where I'm sitting from my, complete cardiovascular state. So this has just got another really cool dimension to it, right? You couple that then with just a basis of looking at your Apple Watch and knowing that, hey, you know, I actually walked an extra 10K per day because I was at some festival or event or whatever, and I didn't sleep much those nights. My Oura Ring showed me, and my data's gone down a little bit. Well, I can largely say it's because I did more output than usual on top of my other things, right? So you just have the capacity to analyze what's going on in a much bigger picture.
You have, that's the beauty, right?
Yeah,
like any device. And I think that even with the tracking of, doesn't matter if you're using just a regular watch or a chest strap or a Whoop or a ring, right? Like all these things are just assets for you to add.
correct.
So you understand what is happening internally. And I think the more you dissect this information, you'll then be able to strategize, like Ali said, how to really overcome maybe some of that lack of recovery, or, you know, impeded of sleep, or really just kind of having shit cardio sessions because you're doing 30 minutes, but you're really only burning in a low zone and you're not doing anything. So trying to understand, right, how can I actually be efficient here? And I think going into the zones just very quickly, because I find that I mean, people that are listening to this topic are like, well, tell me the zone, what should I really be aiming for? It really is super age dependent, right? Like depending on your age, number one, is going to really decipher how high of a heart rate, you know, maximum heart rate you're going to really achieve, or what your resting heart rate is. So trying to, you know, first categorize, you know, young,
where you are,
know where you are, right? Or am I older? And knowing what it feels like. Ali made a really good point of kind of like the pulse and just being able to self-regulate in a way without even a device.
And you know,
right?
the reason I brought that up is because, you know, have you ever, like, you would have done it in your training many years ago, I'm sure, you're having to do an actual with heart strap on high intensity interval training session. So people say they're doing HIIT, and I laugh my ass off. I'm like, no, you're freaking not, because I know what it took for me on an assault bike to get my heart to the highest level in
maximum
that
range.
90%, the maximum range, that 1995 controlled. And I literally fell off the bike after 2 sets, nearly vomiting everywhere. And I was fit at the time. I was at the triathlon. I'm telling you, there's no chance. 95% of people that say I'm doing HIIT, you're not doing HIIT. You're just doing intervals.
If you don't feel like you're going to vomit, like you said it perfectly,
highest of intensity, maximal heart rate, that is not happening. And if you were to tax yourself to that point to get the feeling for it, you'd be shocked. You probably have to try 3 or 4 attempts before you'd even hit the heart rate. It's really hard to do.
It's only in the beginning of your stage of a beginner will I see them hit those 90-95 percentiles easily, and they're like don't really realize that they're hitting those things. But going through that, because besides your age, right, you can definitely, you know, of course, just look it up. It's very simple. If you're 20, you know, let's put very easy, 200, right? Like 200 being that max heart rate. I'm gonna have a heart attack if it's over 200. I definitely would. You know, but anything, right, like for 30, 40, 50, so on and so forth, it does start tapering down. So it is going to reduce as you age. Your heart rate isn't going to have to be as high. So for example, 50, 60, max rate heart 150, right? And I think that that's already like in a very high pretty state. So the older adults actually have a harder time bringing up their heart rate, and that is normal.
more trained, then it's harder again. So it's like,
Oh yeah.
it is difficult. It's super interesting. That's the other thing too. If you are an advanced trainee and you've been lifting weights for a long time, you'll notice that your actual burn rate per session starts to reduce because the body becomes far more efficient and effective. So all of these things that are super interesting. Like, I mean, I geek out on data. We all know this, but I just think the more that you have knowledge and understanding of how your vehicle, your body operates, the more effective you can drag race it. Do you know what I mean? You'll know when to take it for a strap. You know when to take it off for a service.
Let's gas out. Like, let's do that.
You know how to push it to its limits safely. But you also know what it takes to run well. So I think, invest in one if you don't have one, but research your options, right?
Right. And I think those target areas when you're doing percentiles, because I feel like that to me is a better understanding than just the heart rate itself. Like, once you understand your heart rate max, don't focus so much. You can focus on your heart rate, but if you focus on the zones that your heart rate are taking you through, right? Yeah. Understanding, if you're in that 55 to, 60% kind of range, you're really going to be able to recover easily from these cardio sessions. You're not really going to be tough. It's going to be, I can carry a conversation with anybody going into technically like a higher zone between that 65 to 75%. It definitely starts getting a lot more of like, you need a little huff and puff in between. You're like still able to talk and spit out some words. And these are just ways to self-regulate, even with your heart rate currently now, if you don't have a heart rate monitor. If you start getting into those 80, 85 percentiles, you're definitely going to be like, I can't talk to you right now. Like, this is like me just trying to breathe, trying to make sure I can actually, be concentrating, not fall, whatever it is.
Try not to die right now.
Right. And if you get those 90, 95, let me tell you, you're going to want to puke. Like Alex said, a perfect example. It's nauseous. You actually feel like you're lightheaded. You see maybe little stars, and like you
really feel burning. There's a fire in your lungs. Like, you literally have your guts behind your eyeballs, ready to come out your mouth. Like, it's horrible, but it's like, it's scary once you take yourself there, how actually difficult it is to take yourself there too. Because it took me a bit. I had to have 2 runs at the sprint to hit it. And that was pretty good. I got told that was pretty good. There's a lot of people that literally fail it and just can't reach it. But it took me 2 runs, 2 different sprint runs to get it. And then I did it twice. I couldn't reach it a 3rd time. I actually was on the ground going, oh my God, I'm going to vomit.
You're going to puke. Yeah. No. And that's a true high intensity interval training session. So, and that goes back into cardio, like thinking of how you can maybe bring up that heart rate to its max, place, and keeping it. How long can you keep it there? I feel like the more endurance of an athlete you have, you're not going to be able to do it as a beginner, but as you get better, you'll probably be able to endure some of these zones a little bit longer, and you can start only, if any, ever hit those 90 percentiles, because it's very tough. Like Alex said, it's going to be a lot to get you to there. But it's really not about getting there all the time. I feel like so many people focus maybe even on bones. We don't. It's really more about trying to just understand how that feels on your body. Are you working hard enough? And tracking it through one of these devices. I feel, of course, the sleep is just as important, but understanding, our day-to-day activity is probably more important, because so many people that are sedentary don't realize that they don't even get steps in their day from
they literally don't. And this is where it's really cool if you've got someone who's got an office job that's just starting a fitness journey and they have no understanding of their actual movement. It's a really cool way to give them just a basic benchmark to start aiming for. You get them to get awareness first. So putting, a smartwatch on is probably the easiest thing. Even just a cheap Fitbit would be a great way just to start. Get the Fitbit on, get an understanding of what their organic day currently looks like. And it may only be like 2,000, 3,000 steps. Now, we know from data and evidence, and the literature tells us that sitting at 8K steps per day is optimal health. If you want fat burning, 10K per day is where you've got to be starting at. So if you're someone that's only getting 2,000-3,000 in a day, we already know you're not even anywhere close to the optimal health range alone. So getting yourself to build up over time, as a coach, we'd probably say, right, let's just try to get 5. Then let's try to get 6. Then let's try to get 7. And we just work up to the 8. So these are really cool ways that you can use these cheaper to entry market points. So like your basic Fitbits, your very basic Garmin's. Apple Watches get more expensive, but the pros to these smartwatches is that they have customizable faces, customizable bands. You can wear them to work. They can look lovely in a corporate environment. They can also be super practical in a training, situation if you live in the gym like we do. The downside of it, the con of it, is that there's not always exact accuracies. I would suggest taking off your data tracker when you do basic cardio. If you're just wanting to use it for just a step count, which is what a lot of people use it for, take it off when you're doing your training session, take it off when you're doing your cardio session. And if you're a typist, a stenographer, you're doing typing at work, take it off when you're sitting at your desk. Put it on when you're not at the desk typing, because those movements with the hands can actually stimulate a step process and count towards that.
Actually, the watches, it pisses me off because if I'm at the computer and sometimes, I've noticed that, and I'm like, wait, I did not walk this amount today,
exactly.
Like I recognize it. I'm like, oh.
If we know that you are someone that is like that, or if you're a very super expressionate person in meetings and presentations, take it off when you're doing it, because that might log it as a step when it's not. And then you don't want your step count to be like a collaborative of your total output for the day. You want your step count to be separate to what you were doing in your cardio session and or your training. So take it off when you're doing those things. Or what you want to do, if you've got a really good smart tracker, is you will set it for the exercise you're about to do. So you'll go strength training.
That's actually what I was going to say next. I'm like, Ali, I'm like, I can't even, I'll lose this damn thing. If you knew my memory, I got scroll brain. I'm like, I freaking think this thing off is not going anywhere else on me for the rest of the day. So once that thing comes off the charger, it stays on my wrist the rest of the day. So what I was going to mention was like, just, calculate it in. I do agree with Ali in the sense of understanding what your day-to-day activity is, to be way more aware and to maybe not have those, of course, wrong entries from the data, of the watch capturing that you're doing other things. But I will say if you add it in, different activities, I think that was the
that's what I was going to say. You can use it for the cool stuff, which is like, am I progressing in my certain activity over time? So this could be something as cool as setting it. If you're going to go for a run, set it, and it will GPS track your run and tell you just did so many miles in so many minutes. You know what I mean? And then you can do the exact same run 2 or 3 times in the week and progressively aim to get better at it. So there's some really cool stuff you can do with these too, guys. And it's got nothing to do with just tracking a step count. It can mostly improve performance.
Yeah, most of these devices also come with an app, just to mention that, because I feel like nowadays everything is just ran through apps, and everyone wants to kind of keep on top of a calendar and kind of keep yourself a little bit more accountable of activity. If you're not, using a coach and you're trying to self-coach and, really just kind of get some information and learn some knowledge and kind of understand yourself as well, and just kind of gather what we're talking here is just definitely using some way to track. If you notice, we always talk about progressively loading. We always talk about, tracking sleep. And now we're talking about tracking your cardio calories, step counts, and all these things that really understand your body and will help your fitness goals. So you're not this hamster on a wheel, just feeling like I'm doing so much. I just feel like I'm not getting anywhere. Please help, right? Like we're giving you a lot of information here. We're giving you really essentially how we coach and how we, train and track our clients, because I feel like this is such an essential tool to also stay on top, accountable, to make sure that people are working enough, right? Hard enough, or they're not working too much. Because I'm sure you have those clients too. Like, oh my God, you got to tell them you need to stop.
You actually 100%. And look, this is again one of those situations where if you know you have a tendency for obsessive and hyper-focused behaviors, and it's going to make you hyper-focused on the specific requirements of targets of output, and then put you in a position where you're overtraining, under-recovering, creating a disordered pattern in a different way from, not eating, then it might not be for you, and don't use them. You know what I mean? But if you are someone that can just take it for what it is, which is another data point, another checkpoint, another tool in the toolkit, then they can be incredibly valuable to you, And as we discussed, we'll finish on this, the ultimate, what would be classified as the only gold standard based thing in the market when it comes to measuring accurate caloric expenditure, is the polar heart strap, which is utilizing advanced technology that is measuring direct heart rates directly on the chest, closest proximity to the actual heart, and will give you the most accuracy on what your actual expenditure is when it comes time to look at and assess caloric intake against the deficit and percentages set for your target.
Yes. And on that, because you're mentioning their chest strap, actually the Polar 10 watch is the one that I also, if I wasn't going to wear the Apple Watch, that one is just probably one of the listed very, very top watches as well. It's a very nice interface too. So it looks nice. It doesn't have, I guess, as many probably bands, obviously, as Apple Watch out there. Amazon nowadays honestly has so many options though. So those are the top rated. And we went through, of course, kind of what we use from day to day, and just make sure that you do self monitor, because if you don't use a monitor, you can use your wrists, you can use your actual neck, you can actually understand through, your sweat, and not everybody sweats, but that is also sometimes we can kind of understand our body and our thermogenesis and kind of what we're undergoing from that session. So that's just another kind of tip that I guess we didn't discuss, but it's a watch I find such a useful device for my day-to-day. I use it for my year round, and then I'll switch over to the chest strap for just like a prep when I want to be a little bit more precise.
Amazing. Well, I think that's going to give everyone a fair bit of information, a fair bit of stuff to consider. As we discussed, when we're coming into a prep, we're going to utilize some of these tools a little bit more closely and for shorter periods of time just to get accuracy checks. But when we're not in prep, guys, it's just a general checkpoint. Like for me, Aura Ring for me is just a general health and well-being guide. And if I'm going to use a watch, which I do have an Apple Watch with my band, but I just don't always wear it because I don't need to be obsessively controlling my output when I'm not coming into a stage. I kind of have a good gauge and a good standing now on basic data, in the sense where I know if I'm walking the dogs for an hour, my steps are pretty covered for the day. I don't have to be meticulous. I don't have to be hyper-focused and obsessive.
So true.
But if I'm not out for the hour, it's fairly fair to say if I've been sticking sedentary to my desk all day on calls, I'm not going to have hit my 8 to 10K. I'll probably closer to 5, right? So you will get to that place. But I think
eyeballing your step, eyeballing your activity. I love that you're so aware of that. And that's exactly where you can be too. Just knowing kind of what your day-to-day looks like for you. And I hope this episode was good for you. And can't wait to see you already, Ali. It's so good to have you back on. You guys keep waiting for these. We're going to get back on a roll. We had a little downtime there, but we're back on it. And thank you guys again for listening, always being such amazing supporters.
And we'd love to hear your stories about where and how you use trackers, what you found works, what you've loved the most, and any devices where you've gone, hey, this was a game changer for me. Share it with us, because we'll share it with our community. Everyone would love to hear what works and what doesn't. And we'll continue to show more of where we might use these items at different stages across the course of the year.
Yep. Love it. All right, guys. Until next time. See ya, Ali.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Queen Divas Pod, on Twitter at Queen Divas 4, and follow our hosts on Instagram, Alicia at Alicia Gowans _WBFF Pro, and Steph at Stephanie Ayala 7. See you all next week.